Tonight, people across the globe mourning the loss of Pope Francis, and people here in the West who had a chance to meet him sharing their stories.
It was fun with him, and yet you knew that he was sincere. I mean, he wasn't putting on a show. That was just Pope Francis.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to West Coast Wrap. I'm Alex Savage. Tonight, people around the world and here in the West continue paying tribute to Pope Francis, the 88-year-old pontiff known as a champion for the marginalized across all faiths. Let's give you a live look tonight at St. Peter's Square in Vatican City, where it's about 4 o'clock in the morning right now. A much calmer atmosphere here compared to just a few hours ago. We have seen a lot of people flocking to Vatican City to honor the Pope. Across the U.S., flags are flying at half-staff in memory of Pope Francis, just one of many tributes happening around the world. Francis died of a cerebral stroke that led to a coma and later heart failure. The Pope died just hours after greeting the faithful in St. Peter's Square for Easter services. He addressed the crowd even though he was still recovering from a 5-week hospitalization for double pneumonia. Pope Francis had long suffered from chronic lung disease and had part of a lung removed when he was a young man. Vice President J.D. Vance met with Pope Francis on Easter Sunday. That meeting followed public criticism by the Pope of the Trump administration's aggressive immigration policies. Pope Francis has had a history of run-ins with conservatives who've disagreed with his progressive views, promoting immigrant rights and welcoming LGBTQ+ Catholics. President Trump does plan to attend the Pope's funeral. This afternoon, he posted on social media that he and the First Lady look forward to being there. He spoke about the Pope today after signing an executive order for flags to be lowered to half-staff in the Pope's memory.
He was a good man, worked hard, he loved the world, and it's an honor to do that.
And one Arizona man had the rare opportunity to meet Pope Francis. Tonight, Fox 10's Steve Nielsen has more on that unforgettable moment.
This is literally a couple of weeks after you got elected.
From his Phoenix home, Tom Espinoza says he'll never forget the first time he met Pope Francis.
He was, like I tell you, I mean, he really treated us well.
Now working in affordable housing development, Espinoza went to the Vatican in 2013 to meet the Pope as a member of the Catholic Association of Latino Leaders. It wasn't his first Pope meeting. He was at Sun Devil Stadium in 1987 when Pope John Paul visited.
And I pulled him over and I thanked him for speaking so many languages.
The second he met Pope Francis, he says he could tell he was a different type of leader as Pope Francis cracked a joke about food.
As a good Catholic, I'm like, hey man, you know, I've got the Genuflex, you know, and here's the Pope going around, you know, where's the beef, you know, and you're going like, wait a minute, you know, this guy's really down to earth, you know.
In the hours since Pope Francis's death, Espinoza says he knows the Pope was in a lot of pain and is now home.
I mean, here's a guy who's sick, the Pope's sick, and he decides to go to Mass yesterday. So he still, you know, with all the doctors telling him don't go, he still goes to Mass.
He now thinks back to his many meetings with Francis, like when the Pope blessed rosaries for his grandchildren.
It was fun with him, and yet you knew that he was sincere. I mean, he wasn't putting on a show. That was just Pope Francis.
And that was Fox 10's Steve Nielsen reporting for us tonight. No matter your religion, many people say everyone can benefit from the Pope's teachings.
I think how he spoke about the marginalized people in the world and the need for us to all come together and as people, as governments. And so that's probably what I'll miss the most.
Today, many mourners chose to pay respects to Pope Francis by attending masses like this one in Seattle. Similar scenes played out across the West with people reflecting on the Pope's legacy.
It's very telling that it was the day after Easter, in line with the resurrection of Christ, as a subtle reminder to us that life and death go hand in hand.
Pope Francis visited the United States back in September of 2015. His only trip to this country as pontiff included stops in Philadelphia, New York City, and Washington, D.C. The Vatican says public viewing of the coffin of Pope Francis could happen as soon as this Wednesday. The burial will take place between the 4th and 6th day after his death. Pope Francis said in his will that he wishes to be laid to rest at the Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome in a simple tomb. 15 to 20 days following the Pope's death, cardinals will gather in Rome for their conclave to elect the next Pope. And you can find extensive coverage on the Pope's life and legacy at our website. That's westcoastwrap.com. Our online coverage there includes a breakdown of how Pope Francis reformed Vatican operations and gave women more important decision-making roles within the Catholic Church. Well, it was a tough start to the trading week on Wall Street. Analysts say investors are on edge about President Trump's tariff policy and his threats to fire Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. The president has criticized Powell for not reducing interest rates. Powell says the Fed wants to wait for more economic data before making that move. The Dow ended the day down 971 points. The Nasdaq lost 415 points, and the S&P 500 gave up 124 points. 3 U.S. House representatives from the West Coast are hoping their arrival in El Salvador will lead to the release of a Salvadorian national who was living in Maryland when he was deported. Arizona Congresswoman Yasamin Ansari, Oregon Congresswoman Maxine Dexter, and California Congressman Robert Garcia announced their arrival in El Salvador today. They're demanding the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was deported despite having no criminal conviction here in the U.S. Administration officials have said his deportation was done in error. The situation has sparked an outcry from Democrats in Congress. They're advocating for due process protected by the Constitution.
He is being held in violation of a Supreme Court order expressly telling the Trump administration to effectuate and facilitate his coming home. That is being ignored. This is not just a threat to all people in the United States who could be illegally abducted, detained, and transported internationally against their will, but it is a fact that our president does not recognize the branches of government and the balances of power.
The Trump administration initially called Garcia's deportation, quote, an administrative error. Now it's defending his removal, saying Garcia was deported based on a 2019 accusation from Maryland police that he was a gang member.
Did not make a mistake. We have always maintained that this was an individual who needed to be deported from our country.
The members of Congress in El Salvador say they also are hoping to get updates on other people who have been deported there from the U.S. Relatives of a man who was detained by Border Patrol agents in Arizona for 10 days say the Department of Homeland Security is not telling the truth about what happened. Fox 10's Lindsay Regas breaks down what led to that arrest.
Uproar over the weekend after the family of 19-year-old Jose Hermosillo told the media the U.S. citizen and Albuquerque resident was arrested and taken away for 10 days, all because he didn't have his ID.
It's sickening to see the very Constitution about the rights that we're guaranteed being stripped away.
Governor Katie Hobbs tweeting Sunday, this is completely unacceptable. Attorney General Chris Mays writing, my office has reached out to ICE for answers on how this was allowed to happen to an American citizen. But Homeland Security came back with their own statement, calling the reports a narrative, saying that Hermosillo approached Border Patrol, saying he entered illegally and wanted to turn himself in. They write, a few days later, his family presented documents showing U.S. citizenship. The charges were dismissed and he was released to his family.
They're taking action and asking questions later. Why are you talking to somebody if they haven't done anything wrong to asking them for their ID?
The confusion over the arrest only inflaming fears that U.S. citizens are being illegally detained without due process. This comes after videos have circulated online of aggressive arrests of immigrants and the high-profile deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to El Salvador.
This case is not just about one man. It's about protecting the constitutional rights of everybody who resides in the United States.
Garcia's family says he lived in Maryland for 13 years, but the Trump administration says he's an MS-13 gang member who entered illegally and they have the right to deport.
No, you cannot take people without them giving their hearing. They have a say in court to determine what they've done anything wrong. There has to be some presentation of evidence.
The Supreme Court stands as a barrier between Trump's hardline stance and immigrant advocates. Ruling over the weekend, the president's use of the Alien Enemies Act is halted.
Donald Trump is not a dictator. dictator. He's not a king. And so he's going to test these. He's testing what he can do. We cannot allow them to criminalize being a human being in Arizona or the United States. That needs to stop.
Arizona Republicans say they are exploring right now how to get around Governor Katie Hobbs' veto of immigration legislation by putting that issue on the ballot.
With this veto, she has chosen to play political games with the safety and security of our state. The Arizona's voters spoke loud and clear last November when they overwhelmingly passed the Secure the Border Act. But Arizona's governor is now jeopardizing the safety and security of our communities.
Hobbs vetoed the Arizona ICE Act on Friday. This would have required state government agencies to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. That means ICE would have been able to delegate duties to local law enforcement. In her veto letter, Governor Hobbs said the state should retain control of its border security policies and not cede it to the federal government. Coming up tonight here on West Coast Wrap, a rare and historic military airplane making stops here in the West, where you'll be able to tour the B-29 Superfortress.
And a live look over Seattle this evening. A mostly cloudy skies, 56 degrees, and spotty showers for parts of the Pacific Northwest. I'll have a look at what we can expect for Tuesday coming up.
If this part of the Berkeley Hills were to catch fire again, as they did 100 years ago, this may be the only house to survive because it has a very special frontline defense.
Wyoming's only abortion clinic is performing abortions once again. Today, a judge suspended 2 Wyoming laws. One of them required clinics providing surgical abortions to be licensed as outpatient surgical centers. The other required women to get an ultrasound before a medication abortion. The new suspensions will allow patients to seek abortions in-state while the laws are being contested in court. Jury deliberations are underway now in Phoenix in the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell, who's charged with conspiring to kill her estranged husband. Daybell, who's representing herself in this case, rested her case this morning without testifying. The prosecution focused on her possible motives, including a life insurance policy worth $1 million, her desire to be with another man, and extreme religious beliefs. And the prosecution pushed back on claims that Daybell's late brother, who shot and killed Charles Vallow, did so in self-defense. Daybell argued the prosecution had failed to meet its burden of proof in this trial. She has already been convicted in Idaho of killing her 2 youngest children. The man accused of killing an 82-year-old grandmother in Washington appeared in court today facing charges of murder and kidnapping. Jeffrey Ziz appeared in the Olympia courtroom via video conference. Thurston County detectives say Ziz worked as a handyman for Marcia Norman and had dinner with her just days before she disappeared. Her body was found partially encased in cement underneath a shed miles from her home. Her oldest granddaughter addressed the court today. She said her grandmother was an avid quilt maker who loved to host parties.
Marcia was a woman who was vibrant, full of life, and full of plans for the future. And she impacted more people than we even knew. She made a real ripple in the lives of real people.
Investigators say Ziz left the state after being interviewed by them. He was arrested in Montana for a violation in a previous child molestation conviction. He's now being held without bail as he is considered a flight risk. The EPA administrator is heading to San Diego to inspect a sewage leak that's flowing into the U.S. from Mexico. The pollution is reportedly affecting waters where Navy SEALs conduct training. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin says he'll be touring the southern border in a helicopter to survey that leak. A local official wrote a letter to him last month calling the leak the most horrendous environmental and public health disaster in America.
For decades has been raw sewage that's been traveling across the border, and Americans are very concerned with regards to beach closures, degradation of the Tijuana River Valley, concerns with public health, air quality.
In his new role, Zeldin says he's addressing a backlog of chemical reviews and is preparing to present a list of demands to Mexico aimed at resolving that cross-border pollution problem. Let's shift now and talk about our weather here in parts of the west are warming up again. This is what it looked like north of Albuquerque today as temperatures climbed above 70 degrees. The 80s are expected later on this week in this area, but in some other communities, there is a cool down that's on the way. For more, let's bring in KTVU meteorologist Rosemary Orozco, who is tracking our conditions across the west. Hey, Rosemary.
Yes, Alex, take a look at Phoenix this afternoon. High clouds and 91 degrees, so high clouds and hot over parts of the desert southwest, and expecting more of that for the Phoenix area come tomorrow. Meanwhile, on the flip side, Seattle here, mostly cloudy skies. We showed you before the break. A little bit of a soggy one over the Pacific Northwest, and Seattle struggling at 57 degrees. Meanwhile, as we head over towards California, San Francisco, a beautiful 64 with mostly clear skies this afternoon, and Southern California looking pretty as well, giving you a look here over Los Angeles, 72 the afternoon high here. California will be cooling down just a little bit. Meanwhile, the Pacific Northwest is expected to get a break from that wet weather and have some nice weather come in towards Tuesday. Here's a look at what is going on right now. Still a little bit of shower activity. This is winding down and moving out. And with that, we've got some cold air filtering behind it. There's even an advisory for frost. That shade of pink there you can see over the coastline near Oregon and then into the interior of Northern California as well for early tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, we've got dry weather expected for tomorrow for most. Where we may see some pop-up showers, it's going to be the higher elevation stuff. By Tuesday in the afternoon, we've got some unstable weather moving through the Intermountain West. And again, that high elevation, high base cloud cover expected and the slight chance of scattered showers, even going to introduce the possibility of thunderstorms for areas like Denver as we head into Thursday. And Denver will see a big drop in temperatures in the days ahead. Not for tomorrow, though, sitting pretty at 73. Meanwhile, as I mentioned a moment ago, Phoenix going to be warm once again. A low 90s expected for you there. California had a very enjoyable weekend with temperatures several degrees above average. That begins to change as temperatures cool off just a little bit tomorrow, and a dramatic drop coming in on Wednesday, with San Francisco looking at 59 degrees, Los Angeles looking at 64. Meanwhile, Seattle, you've got some enjoyable weather coming your way for tomorrow, low 60s, followed by upper 60s on Wednesday, mostly sunny, and 72 on Thursday. Alex?
All right, Rosemary, thank you. After Southern California's recent firestorm, a Wyoming company says it's been getting a lot of calls from homeowners who are interested in a high-tech solution to help keep their houses from burning. KTVU's Tom Vakar spoke with one homeowner in the San Francisco Bay Area who's already installed a system the company calls a frontline wildfire defense.
Like hundreds of thousands of California-insured homeowners, famed landscape architect Doug Finlay and his wife, who were State Farm customers for more than 3 decades, found themselves without homeowners insurance for their Berkeley Hills home. Though the Finleys were able to find a far more expensive insurer, they also decided they needed something more to have a better chance of not losing their home of almost 4 decades.
I'm insuring the insurance company.
They chose an exterior home sprinkler system from a company called Frontline Wildfire Defense.
And this one is a proactive system that helps basically turn the area around your house into a bit of a rainforest.
It's a self-defense mechanism for your home, so you could safely get out of harm's way and not make a trade-off on your home defending itself.
It tracks fires long before even wind-blown embers, a leading cause of fires, can get to your home.
It's satellite data, it's camera data, it's weather data, it's sensor data, and we use that information to inform our sprinkler network, when to turn on and provide protection during a wildfire.
Within seconds of turning it on, sprinklers bathe the outside surface of the home with water and a Class A non-toxic firefighting foam.
Proactively wet the materials down before embers land on them, and they're in a state that's too wet to burn.
So how long does wet stay wet? Well, the combination of water and foam stays wet for up to 4 days, long after the fires have passed. Data from the recent LA fires shows impressive results.
Of the 61 systems we had in the LA area, on and around the fire area, 59 of those homes were saved.
Those are pretty good odds.
The system can be turned on by manually flipping a switch at the home, over a telephone app, or an automatic activation if fire conditions are threatening.
our days are a little calmer now because we're not waiting for some emergency text that would tell us, get out. You got to get out right now.
15-year financing is available with many home systems starting at $500 a month. Tom Vakar, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
Coming up tonight here on West Coast Wrap, a rare piece of military history making its way across the West, where you'll be able to tour this bomber known as the Superfortress and learn a lot more about its history. The Department of Education is set to resume collections on defaulted federal student loans starting May 5th, ending a pause that's been in place since 2020. Officials say with roughly 60% of borrowers behind on their payments, the federal loan system is at risk. The agency will partner with the Treasury Department to begin collecting overdue payments, and they also plan to launch an outreach campaign to urge borrowers to enroll in auto pay. Today, the Federal Trade Commission filed a lawsuit against San Francisco-based Uber, accusing the rideshare company of deceiving customers. In that lawsuit, the FTC claims the rideshare app charged Uber One users without their consent, did not deliver on the savings it promised, and made canceling the subscription a difficult process. The FTC claims Uber misled customers by stating they would save $25 a month while not taking into account the $10 subscription fee. An Uber spokesperson says the company is disappointed with the allegations, but feels confident the court will rule in its favor. Finally tonight, U.S. history lands here in the West. A World War II-era B-29 bomber plane has been restored. And as Fox 10's Lindsay Regas reports tonight, it's ready to welcome visitors in Arizona and teach them some valuable lessons.
The B-29 flew in from Abilene, Texas. It will be here for a few days for the public to see. One thing you could do is tour the inside, and that's exactly what we did. The B-29 is one of over 1,600 B-29 bombers built by the Boeing Company in Wichita, Kansas during World War II. Doc is one of 2 B-29 Superfortresses still flying worldwide. Doc's friends are honoring the men and women who designed, built, maintained, and flew this aircraft during World War II by touring the U.S. and sharing its story.
Because of the long legs, this plane can fly over 3,000 miles. It was sent to the South Pacific, and they were flying out of Guam, Tinian, Saipan, which is about 1,000 miles away from Japan. Flies about 200 miles an hour, a little over, but you figured 5 hours up to Japan, a couple hours doing their wartime mission, and then 5 hours back. So it was easily 12, 13, 15 hours.
The B-29 will be open to the public Thursday through Sunday. There will even be flights on Saturday and Sunday. The next stop will be Palm Springs. Reporting in Goodyear, Lindsay Regas, Fox 10 News.
All right, that does it for West Coast Wrap for tonight. A quick reminder before we head out here, you can stay up to date on all the big stories we're covering across the West at our website, westcoastwrap.com. We'll leave you with this beautiful shot of Seattle. Have a great night.